I understand the difference between decriminalization and legalizing. But in 2011, when we started down the path of decriminalizing marijuana, this was exactly the way it was done. However, back then, at the very least, we recognized the impact that possession of drugs with children, what sign that might be indicating, and therefore we treated children differently. We said that if a child is in possession of marijuana, it wouldn't just be an infraction, but there would be the ability for there to be ramifications so that we have early intervention of children that are potentially using drugs. As we've heard already, the science on psilocybin isn't yet resolved. Just back in 2011, the science was not yet resolved on marijuana use. And yet it was only decriminalizing a small amount. That's all we're doing. It's harmless. And then years later, we went to medical. And now we're full-blown commercialized of an illicit product that's illegal under federal law that you can't get away from. Even if you're driving in your vehicle, you smell it. You go out in public, you smell it. I get to visit my son in his college dormitory, and there is not a day I've been there that it doesn't reek of marijuana. That is what we have done for the children in the state of Connecticut over the last 10 years. And so when we're passing legislation, and I know we address things, we try to right the wrongs of the past, as we did with the resolution that we just talked about previously, I would like our legislature to begin to look at the wrongs of today that we are doing. Because I believe with this legislation, we will have a future legislature doing a resolution apologizing to the children of this generation for what we are doing to them. And I don't think we feel the impact as much because we are in a different generation. The impact that we have, we don't feel it as much. But I will tell you, when I talk to my 20-year-old and my 22-year-old and my 18-year-old, it's a very different conversation. I see children that are smoking pot before they're going out and playing sports. We used to think that playing sports and keeping children active in those activities was keeping them safe. But it's not anymore, because there is a proliferation of drugs throughout the state of Connecticut. And if marijuana wasn't enough, we are now heading down the path of legalizing magic mushrooms. And make no mistake, I know this is where it's going. Why? Because we've already created that precedent in 2011, when we are only decriminalizing possession of a half an ounce of marijuana. And today, it's everywhere, 10 years later. And I don't think as a state we're better off. We are now dealing with fatalities on our roadways every single day. People are talking about it. The head-on collisions, the motorcycle accidents. We now had to pass a law to test the drivers in fatalities to figure out what it is. And we are seeing the THC levels are rising. So to suggest that this is an innocent piece of legislation, I don't think it is. It's frustrating because the science isn't there yet to prove the efficacy of psilocybin. And the science isn't there yet to prove the medicinal value of marijuana. Just last week, Denmark studied over 6 million cases of marijuana use. And they found that over 30% of males from repeated drug use of marijuana has created a causation of psychosis, of schizophrenia in those males. That's where this science is starting to go. And so I regretfully, or not so regretfully, have to stand here today to oppose this legislation. I'm a little saddened because when we voted on the marijuana bill in 2011, there actually was a conversation about the impact it would have on our children. And I remember we PT'd that bill, and we talked about it, and we actually rewrote the bill to try to insulate children who are caught with possession of marijuana, not to throw them in jail, but to hope that there'd be some accountability and prevent them from becoming lifelong drug users. So me suggesting that we not do this infraction route is not suggesting that we throw them in prison, because that argument is getting tired. But it's about preventing our youth from getting addicted to yet another substance. When is enough enough in this state? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Representative.